Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bison Media Zone here on WDAY Extra with the Forum's Mike McFeely. I'm Dom Izzo as we get ready for North Dakota State and North Dakota, round 117. Newest edition of the Fargo Dome on Saturday. I know you're pumped up for it. The Bison Conference home opener, sellout crowd is anticipated. That alone will get the hairs on your neck standing up.
It really won't. But that I think that at least shows that it's a game that the fans are more interested in than other games. And I'll just leave it at
that. We'll get to the Valley race and all that later on in the show. This is second game of what we've called the gauntlet of a 4-game stretch here. The Bison handled things really well, which we'll get to in a second against Illinois State. But if they're able to get this one with the Southern Illinois scuffling right now with the backup quarterback and the Jacks, Mike, suddenly projection-wise things would look awfully different if the Bison are able to win Saturday.
It would, because as I wrote and we've talked about is if you get the first 4 games turned out as we all thought they would, pretty much, right? They lost to Colorado. They won their next 3. Not necessarily how we thought they're going to win them, but they won their next 3. And so they are where they are. And then they started off against Illinois State. We thought, well, that's going to be a tough game because Illinois State we thought was going to be a top 3 or 4 team in the league.
I did. I'll raise my hand.
I did too. I did too. I was right along with you. I looked at what they had coming back and went, wow, they're going to be really good. Didn't turn out to be true. So now that middle 4 games, they're already 1-0 in those middle 4 games. If the Bison can go 3-1 or 4-0 in these middle 4, they are really set up for a fun last 4 of the season in a 12-game year, because then, and again, they got to win Saturday first. They have to win in Carbondale, but that game against South Dakota State then really sets up to be huge, because if you can win that game, or even if you lose it, you're going to have 2 losses with 4 games left that are winnable, and the toughest one we think would be South Dakota down in Vermillion. So this game Saturday, it's a rivalry game, and people want to use that angle because they want to go back to 1995 and make it 1995 again. But just in the now, it's a huge game for this season for North Dakota State.
I will throw out, you brought this up to me as we were getting ready to leave Normal on Saturday. Colorado won at UCF Saturday emphatically. The Buffs are, that loss, it looks a heck of, as Colorado keeps winning, and the way the Bison nearly won the football game, that looks better on NDSU's resume.
It does. And I will say also that we thought East Tennessee State was going to be a boat race for North Dakota State. It didn't turn out that way. That again, long ways from the finish line. We are so early in the season. But at the end of the year, if things keep trending the way they're going with Colorado and East Tennessee State, those look like a good loss, a phrase you hate, but a good win, a better than expected win on the road at East Tennessee State. So all of that's working in the Bison's favor as of now. I will say,
though, Saturday we're halfway. So I guess you can't say it's game 6 on Saturday. So we're halfway. So it's not early anymore.
It seems early.
I know, it does.
It seems early out there, even though it's late, apparently.
After Saturday. Simple question to you after what we saw Saturday in Normal. Is the Bison defense back?
It was for one day. Okay. We always talk about trends, right? We hit the Bison pretty hard in this market because there's a trend of 200-plus rushing games. And there's been a trend over the last couple of years, frankly, with them giving up a bunch of rushing yards. One game does not make a trend, but what we saw looked like a completely different defense than we saw against Colorado in pass defense, which was a whole different deal with Shedeur and Travis and those guys. But the run defense on Saturday against the Redbirds was excellent. 46 yards gained rushing, minus the sack yards, came out to be 8. Either way, very impressive. And it kind of felt like late in the year last year, like when the Bison defense looked sort of cautious all year, and then once they got into playoffs, they were flying around like crazy. That South Dakota game in the playoffs last year, we all sat in the press box of Vermillion and went, where's this been for the last 10 games? You know, where was it in Grand Forks? Where was it in Brookings? What we saw on Saturday in Normal was what we thought we were going to see the whole year from the Bison.
Vintage performance there. Frankly, after the game in Grand Forks, is when things changed for the Bison defense. It came maybe incrementally. It's the Jacks. NDSU was.
Well, the Jacks was really good.
But against Southern Illinois, Northern Iowa, they were pretty darn good in those two games to end the regular season.
Yeah, and it's that was changes in the way the team was coached.
Yes.
Right. I mean, moving some coaches and different coaches making different decisions and things like that. This year, maybe it's more personnel and tweaking some things, and just staying. We keep hearing it from the Bison players on Tuesdays when we get a chance to talk with them. Keep it simple.
Yep.
Just don't get overcomplicated. Don't try to do too much. We're trying to do too much against East Tennessee State. We're trying to be too perfect a year ago.
Yeah, that's what Jackson Dutenhofer said to me yesterday. We're trying to be perfect.
We're trying to be too perfect in every play last year. This year, just at some point, you got to just say, go get the ball.
Yep.
Go get the ball carrier and tackle him.
We saw one play from Sam Young, and that's another play. Talk about personnel changes. So they moved Young to the strong safety. Darius Gibbons started at free safety. That seemed, and I asked Tim Polisek, like, was that something that could have been done earlier? I think he acknowledged yes, but that certainly came out in a big-time way on Saturday.
But again, the Bison have now called the first 4 games of the year not non-conference, but preseason, which is interesting. It's a little one of those semantics things.
Correct. I picked up on that
guys like
as
you and I pick up on, and nobody else notices,
Yep.
but you and I do because we're nerds.
Yes.
But that's what those 4 games are for. You're trying to win that. You have to win them. If you're North Dakota State, you have to win the last 3 non-conference games, right? If you don't, there's bigger problems. But you can also use that time to find out what you have.
Yep.
And it appears that the Bison coaches coming out of fall camp thought they saw one thing or did see one thing, and now maybe they said, well, let's try this. Let's tweak that. Let's put this person there. Let's give this person more reps. Let's give that person fewer reps. And that's what coaching is, right? I mean, you make changes and you coach the kids.
They also got health back. Jalen Crumby, who'd missed the 4 games with first 4 with a thumb injury, was back. That's a guy that provides some athleticism at the safety spot. He played on Saturday. You're going to see him more this coming Saturday, number 4 out there.
Yeah, and again, health is a thing that's been it's with every team.
Yep.
I mean, Illinois State's been devastated by injuries. Southern Illinois has been devastated by injuries. The Jacks were fighting through some things down in Brookings. They had a timely bye week for them.
Yep.
The Bison, of course, lost Cole Wisniewski and Hunter Brozu even before the season started. But when you start to get some of the guys back, that's huge in college football.
All right, so what do we make from last year's game? We all talked about it. The UND was eventually going to get one. I think both you and I picked UND to win the game. I did not pick them to win by 25 and score nearly half 100 on the Bison. Did that change things in this, or is that a one-year fluke, so to speak?
No, I think what's happened is UND is better, and I think Jackson Dutenhofer also referenced that yesterday when you're talking to him, is back in 2015 when the series restarted, Jackson said, well, there's maybe different levels that we were talking about back when the game restarted.
We saw that.
And he said now the teams are much closer, maybe even. I don't know. We're going to find out what happens on Saturday. But UND is much better than they were. NDSU, NDSU is not a powerhouse team that's going to steamroll people. I mean, that was South Dakota State last year, was equal to the Bison teams of 13, 18, 19. Right?
Yep.
I mean, but this Bison team isn't that. Yeah. And so it's more of and I don't know if there ever will be again in the transfer portal era and the NIL era. And so the teams are just much closer. And so
there's nobody in FCS like that this year. There's nobody steamrolling.
I don't think so.
It doesn't look like it.
It doesn't look like it. Certainly not. The only team that will be able to say that would be South Dakota State, and I don't know that.
I haven't seen it yet.
No.
Yeah, through the first 4 games. What has surprised you the most on UND through their first 5 games?
Like everybody else, I think the offensive line and the quarterback. We'll see. Tim Polisek made it a point yesterday to say that they're going to get after.
We're going to get after him, is what
Simon Rumfo, and try to make it tough on him in a difficult environment. And that's really the question: is Simon Rumfo's looked good enough in the first 5 games, but this is going to be a whole different deal. And he's a North Dakota kid, and he grew up, following this rivalry and following both. His brother played at NDSU for a few weeks, I think, back early on, and so we're going to find out what he can do. And the offensive line has been a surprise. We thought, and this is not a Fargo, Grand Forks, NDSU, UND thing. There were people in Grand Forks and at UND, by the way, that were going, I'm not quite sure what we have here. It's turned out okay. And this is a credit to Bubba Schweigert and the staff up there for recruiting some under-recruited kids and developing them into good offensive linemen.
The one thing that we all talked was quarterback and O-line going into 2024, and both have surpassed that second half against Montana totally changed their season. If they get blown out of the building, who knows what we're talking about right now. They won that football game, and it's totally changed the arc of their year.
It's changed the narrative around their team. It's changed the arc of their season, and it's really turned this game into something that people didn't expect when the season started. I think a lot of observers, for what it's worth in FCS, would have thought that if things had gone as the script dictated they were going to go, this would be a blowout NDSU win. I don't think anybody thinks that right now.
Guy that everybody will have their eyes on is number 1, Bo Belquist for UND, who's had an unbelievable start to the season. His stats, Mike, against NDSU have been amazing. 12 receptions, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Bison. I'm not sure he's playing his best, but boy, he has saved some great games against North Dakota State.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a really good player, and it's one of those. This has been talked about ad nauseum in Fargo. His dad played for NDSU. Why isn't he in a Bison uniform? All those things, but really, that's been 5 years now. We should be past that.
Correct.
So I'm sorry I brought it up, but he's just been really excellent. I mean, he's just a really good college football receiver. He could play at a higher level. He chose to stay at UND for his final year, so kudos to him for doing that. But he's just, I'm not some kind of receivers coach, but when you watch him run his routes, he's really good at that. And I'm not dismissing his athleticism or anything like that, because you got to be good. But man, he just runs the routes so precisely and so well.
And he's always open.
Yeah.
He's always open.
Yeah.
That's the thing to me.
And other teams know that he's the guy,
right?
And he's still open. So that's
because we talked about that all offseason. We're like, who's going to get the ball to Belquist?
Right.
And now they figured that out. And Simon Rumfo is the guy.
But that's the thing, right? I mean, so if North Dakota State can take away the run, and if it takes away the run, then you make Simon Rumfo beat you, and then you're able to pay more attention to Bo Belquist. And so that's sort of the key, obviously, for NDSU. And NDSU didn't come close to stopping the run a year ago.
Gavin Zebarth was running right up the middle, untouched.
And Tommy Schuster then, I think, threw 12 passes last year, and only one that was more than about 5 yards. It didn't need to. And so UND just blew him out.
Isaiah Smith and Zebarth have been really good again. And that's something that's just talking about the Bison rush defense prior to Illinois State has to be the biggest factor in my mind for this game on Saturday. We'll break. We come back and look at the other FCS matchups this coming weekend, including the Jackrabbits are back on the field. Some good ones in the Missouri Valley. We'll do that as the Bison Media Zone rolls on this Wednesday morning. We're back right after this. Back here on the Bison Media Zone on this Wednesday morning, look at some of the spotlight games around the FCS for week number 6. Top left-hand corner, the Jackrabbits, Michael, are back in action against Northern Iowa. Funny part about that series, Northern Iowa plays great in Brookings. They don't play great at home against South Dakota State.
And that happened when Northern Iowa was a better program as well. So I don't know about Northern Iowa's current iteration. I'm just not sold on what Mark Farley has going down there.
You got a little intel on that bottom right game, Chattanooga, East Tennessee State. That is a rivalry game.
Yes, when we were down in Johnson City, and by the way, the weather, Johnson City was very close to all the stuff that was going on with Hurricane Helene. But the president of East Tennessee State University, when I chatted with him on the Friday when we got down there, he said that Chattanooga is our rival. And so this will be a big game in Johnson City, and it's a big one for East Tennessee State.
Chattanooga was picked to win the SoCon.
They're not.
And ETSU is having a heck of a year. So.
Yeah, Chattanooga's 1-3 right now, something like that, and so East Tennessee State could pretty much bury them. And I expect them to.
They're good.
And Bison fans want East Tennessee State to win for the same reasons that we talked about earlier in the program.
That Northern Arizona-Idaho game I had no eyeballs on until NAU beat Sac State, and then Idaho lost to UC Davis.
Well, Idaho was down to their third-string quarterback, and football's a long season, man. And this happens every year. Oh my gosh, Idaho! It's like, okay. I mean, but you still have to go through the conference, and there's still 8 more games left, and things happen. Idaho's going to be fine. Their defense looks pretty good to me, but maybe UC Davis is better than we thought, and maybe this game is going to be a tighter game than we thought.
Should we be giving more love to Central Arkansas? They have UAC in a game in the United Athletic Conference. They're playing ACU. That's Abilene Christian. A lot of vowels there. But Central Arkansas, we saw them last year. They have Shunderick Powell. They have David Walker. they're probably a top 5 team in my mind.
Their
in the
coach
FCS.
last year after NDSU handled them pretty well, but Central
Brown.
Arkansas did do some things against the Bison. Nathan Brown said, "We're not there yet, but we're getting close.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some pieces here, and I think we're seeing some of that." Will McElvain is back for his 72nd year of college football.
Northern Iowa he was the quarterback here in 2019.
Yeah, so it's amazing that at that age he can still throw and run as well as he can. But Will McElvain is still chugging in college football, but that matters.
Yes,
I mean, we joke about it,
experience matters.
but that matters because what are we seeing in Fargo? What are we seeing in Brookings?
Correct.
What are we seeing other places?
That's the thing. Like Central Arkansas last year had games where they got tripped up. It has not happened this season, especially in their own league. This is one Abilene Christian's ranked. Go on the road. They take care of that. That's maybe sign of maturity for a team that wasn't able to do that last year.
Yeah, and so we'll see. I mean, they seem to be that. I don't want to call them the pop-up team because I thought they were okay last year, but they just kind of stumbled and mumbled. But they might be that team this year that, the Furman of last year, or the. The name your SoCon or
East Tennessee
Southland,
State was a couple years ago.
That pops up for a year with a great senior class and then kind of makes some noise in the playoffs.
Is it maybe too blusterous to say Illinois State, SIU is season on the line, or are those seasons over in your opinion?
If you win, you're probably still in the mix a little bit, but you have to. Whoever loses this game is probably done.
Because you're 0-2 in the league.
Especially if you're Southern Illinois, I think if they lose, they're done. Both teams are just so banged up. It's not a game that is going to turn out like we thought it was going to at the start of the year.
No, I had that one circled like, okay, that's normally going to be really good. But with the Illinois State, another guy, David Walker, went down yesterday with an Achilles tear. We showed that play, and it was a non-contact. You immediately thought that's not a good
And we
deal.
saw him curled up on the turf, kind of reaching back for his leg, and somebody in the press box said that might be an Achilles because nobody touched him when he's on the turf.
Indiana State, Youngstown State, we don't have on our graphic. Who is more disappointing in your mind? It's got to be Youngstown, right?
Oh, Youngstown.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all thought that there was some progress being made under Doug Phillips, and I've been pumping his tires for 5 years now. And we thought last year, okay, they got to the playoffs. I thought they were going to do better against Villanova in the second round or the first round, and they got smoked. But they were just crushed by the transfer portal. They just lost a ton of talent, and that's going to be a challenge for every college football program, but especially for a school like Youngstown State where there's maybe not the support and the tradition that there is at an NDSU or South Dakota State.
We were visiting off air about the Jackrabbits. So the Jacks are at Northern Iowa, have Youngstown, then in Fargo, home for USD.
Ooh.
Is that a gauntlet there for the Jacks?
It is the last 2 games for the Jacks, but I mean,
and they still have to go to Grand Forks.
They're still the best team in FCS.
Yes,
the Jacks are still the best team in FCS.
Because they didn't play last week and they scuffled with Augustana. I think there's that narrative out there that, well, how good are they? They still have the best talent, in my mind.
I think they do. And the quarterback hasn't quite gotten the attention that he's gotten in the past. I think Cam Miller's kind of, because of his play that he deserves, has gotten the attention nationally in FCS about being the Walter Payton Award winner favorite. But the Jacks are kind of quietly, they beat Southeast Louisiana by 41 with about half a team.
Shut out on the road, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they sat at like 12 guys. And so they're still pretty good, folks. Don't forget about the Jacks.
And they handled Incarnate Word at home as well, too. The Word made that a game in the second half, and then the Jacks put the foot down there in the fourth quarter. We got a big week of TV coverage. Don't forget, we got Bison volleyball for you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, as North Dakota State hosts Denver. That's the Summit League opener for the Bison as they try to go 2-0 in Summit League play. We'll have that for you tomorrow night on WDAY Extra. And don't forget, Bison Game Day, live on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Jeff Kolpak, myself, Kyle Emanuel, Sam Getzinger get you ready for UND and North Dakota State at 2:30 inside Gate City Bank Field at the Fargo Dome. Should be, what did Scotty Miller say? You're hanging from the rafters?
Be hanging from the rafters.
It's going to be a great one. Thanks for coming by. We appreciate it this morning. Thanks to Mike McFeely for joining us. The Bison Media Zone is back with you next Wednesday at 10:30. We'll see everybody at the game on Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.